Welcome to Fiery Femmes, the podcast where high-achieving women build wealth, redesign their careers, and create lives with real freedom. I'm Sheena, an accredited investor, former tech sales professional, and the founder of Fiery Femmes. After a decade across global SaaS, startups, and my own reinventions, I realized the most powerful thing a woman can have is optionality. So, in every episode, we explore the future of work, the psychology of wealth, and the practical strategies that help women build careers and lives that evolve as fast as they do. Chenelle, thank you so much for being here today. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited to begin.
Likewise. Yeah. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I think your career is so incredible. Definitely, I think you've pioneered the portfolio career and career transitions. So super excited to dig into that.
Sure.
And you have a really cool role, and I'd love to know how do you define it, and what's your title right now?
My title right now. So I currently work as the investment director for female-led ventures at Trawalla Group. So it's a family office, but I am in the very lucky position to run a specific gender lens venture portfolio within that family office. And so I work for a woman called Carol Schwartz. And the short of it is really that gender equity is such an important advocacy for that family office. And, there's a real belief that one, and I'm sure I don't have to repeat these stats to anyone. I'm sure you've discussed this on this podcast, but the percentage of capital that goes to female founders in general, right? It always feels a little abysmal. And so as a society, it really does like a touch. It's a little small.
Just
a touch,
Yeah.
And so, I think we really feel like it's very important to where we can move the needle and where we can sort of move it towards a direction that we want it to go, meaning more equitable share of capital, then that's what we'd like to do. So, sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying. So I run female-led ventures. And so what we do is invest in female founders. But actually, more recently, we've had a huge focus on investing in female capital allocators. So what that means is we take LP positions into venture funds that have been founded or are led by women. And the thinking really here is, we want to get more female founders funded, but that's going to be really hard to do if all the investors investing are largely not women. So we need more women at the table making these investment decisions, deciding where capital goes in order to make that more equitable. Look, it's one answer of many, but we think it's a really important lever to have and to do. And so that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. We make investments in funds and we make investments in female founders.
That is so beautiful and so timely as well,
Yeah.
because today Phia announced that they had a 35 million seed round.
Yes, I saw that. Yep.
And most of their investors are women.
That's right.
So we love it.
We love it. It's really, I love fashion. I think Phia is a fantastic startup. I think I'm excited to see what, Phoebe and what's her name? I think it's Sophia. Right? Well, I'm impressed that I could command that information, but the female economy is large and it's growing, right? If we think about the general population, it's 50% women. And so we love to see women building in this space to cater for women and their needs. Yeah, I don't know. Just very exciting and really exciting to see a lot of capital flow through startups like that.
I agree. And on top of that as well, women typically are the buyers in household.
Correct.
Anyway.
Yes.
So it's great to see that, one, we actually have more intel into that decision-making process, the thought process, the user experience, and the buying journey. So it's a great time.
Absolutely. No, excited to hear it. We need more of it. We need more women building in this space. We need more investors. I think, in their cap table, I think the article or the headline I saw earlier today has a lot of celebrity names, a lot of women, right? But I think that's really exciting as more women get the confidence to invest. I think it's really important to sort of see that trend continue.
Huge. It's also amazing because they focused on who can get the most eyeballs. So that brand awareness piece, and then people will be thinking, oh, how can I invest in seed rounds?
Yeah.
And it's all going to be happening from that side. One thing that I want to ask before we dive a little bit deeper, what is not listed on your LinkedIn profile, Chenelle?
Yeah, I had to think about this question. What is not listed on my LinkedIn profile? I think I like to consider myself like a really frustrated creative, right? So you look at my LinkedIn profile and it's a lot of roles around data, analytics. I'm in investment today, venture. And, in another life, I would love to, I love art, fashion. Like there are sort of this spectrum of things that I'm really interested in and spend a lot of time surrounding myself with. And that's a long-winded way of saying, I think one, I love that stuff. I have a secret food cooking newsletter, which I will not disclose today, but that's not on my LinkedIn profile. But I think there's really something to creativity. I love creative people. I think investing requires a level of creativity. I come from a liberal arts background. I went to a liberal arts college. I studied economics, but I also studied French. And so having that breadth of exposure and experience to not just, one area, whether that's like math, quantitative stuff. I think we grow up often being told you're either left-brained or right-brained, you're good at math or you're good at art. And I think we shouldn't have to choose. And so even if I think at first glance, my LinkedIn profile probably looks very like she's a serious finance data investor person, I don't know if that's the only dimension I would define myself with. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because you're the second person on the pod who's creative, analytical as well.
Yeah.
But love the creative, like just the flow.
Sure. Yeah. And I would probably argue I'm not the second person. I would argue that everyone has like that creative side and that analytical side, right? It's just like, allowing it to flourish, which to be honest, I'd say I'm on a journey figuring out to do. Talk to me in 10 years and see, maybe I've changed careers again.
Well, how does the creativity manifest for you? Like what do you
Yeah,
do for
that's really interesting. Like personally or professionally or both?
personally?
Great. How does that manifest? Look, I think, spending time surrounding, I think, I think being creative means being very curious. And so personally, right, it means really exposing myself to things outside my day to day, whether that's art and like going to a museum or like having a hand at like painting. I suck, but like let's call it that. And then professionally, I think that curiosity really lends itself well from an investment standpoint, right? Because then you're thinking about the businesses that you're seeing with a different lens. Like it's not a pure, what do the numbers look like? And that's that. Like you look at different angles, you look at things like branding and positioning, like you look at, how there's a people element to it. And I think that requires a level of creativity and curiosity.
Got it. Got it. I love that you said like you're a frustrated creative and you also have a food
Yeah. Oh yeah.
cooking
So
newsletter.
personally, it's very much in hiatus, but I do it with a friend and we just like to write about what we eat and what we're making. And, it's a fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. That's actually my creativity as well. Like I
Yeah.
love cooking.
Yeah. Great.
Like personally love the process of chopping, of obviously like
I
peeling
don't
and
actually like that
chopping
part.
and creating.
I just like the mixing. I mean, I'll do it because it's part of it, but
Yeah.
I should really learn knife skills. Mine are terrible, but
Yeah, definitely. I think if my theory
Mm.
or my thesis is if you have a dull knife and if you don't know your knife skills, you tend to hate cooking. But if you like get to master them, you're usually fine. And if you have a sharp knife,
Yeah.
you will love it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. I'm not quite. Maybe I'll get there, but I still love it.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And awesome. So I love that. Like you're a frustrated creative, you love food. And I also know that you're Filipino and you
Yes.
moved to the US and to Australia.
Yes.
Which did you go to college in Philippines?
Yeah. No, I didn't. So I grew up in the Philippines, born and raised. I'm from Manila. I know you're Filipino too.
Kumusta?
Born and raised in Manila, but I moved to go to uni in the States when I was 19. I was really lucky. I got a scholarship to a full ride to go to a liberal arts college in the Northeast, which, really was a completely different experience. Again, I majored in econ, but I also did French. And so I think, I just like found myself in a completely different world at a very young age. And then I moved to New York for work. I spent 8 years there. And then I got sent to Australia for work again to set up our offices here for the data analytics company that I used to work at. And the rest is history. I'm still here. Where will I be in, a couple of years? Who knows? But yeah, I'm Filipino born and raised, but sort of a citizen of everywhere, if you will.
Citizen of the world.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely very common. I see it with my friends and myself all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to have you here because I think there's that funny in between of, when people like ask you, "Oh, where are you from?" Well, why do you have that accent?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's a
I
very
think there's a lot
unplaceable.
more of
Yeah.
us.
It's an unplaceable accent. There's a lot of us, and I'm sure you know this, right? Filipinos are one of the largest diasporas the world over, right? We're everywhere. And I think, there's a certain profile that's well known about what that looks like. But I think there's a real diversity across that diaspora in general, right?
Yeah.
People doing lots of different things, not just the ones that we're well known to be, which is amazing and that's great. But I think the Philippine, like it's a really interesting beast, if you will.
Yeah, actually, I'm getting to meet a lot more Filipino women in tech,
Yeah.
and I got like, especially here in Australia, and she was like, "Hey, we should set up like a dinner. Like, do you know if there's
Yeah.
any like certain community?" I'm like, "Actually, no, we don't, but we should.
We
We should have
should.
it.
Yeah. Who are these people? Who else? Yeah. Let's do it.
I'll in- I'll gather around. I'll
Yeah.
gather
Yeah.
around.
Great.
Beautiful. Well, one thing that I wanted to talk about is starting a syndicate and the thesis of the family office where you're at. So you talked a little bit about it, but I know that you've had the experience of starting a syndicate
Yeah.
a few years ago.
Sure.
Would love for you to share what a syndicate is to the wider audience
Sure.
and what made you start that syndicate. How did you find the experience?
Yeah. So I started a syndicate with a couple of friends of mine. I want to say it was about 2 or 3 years ago. It was coming off the back of a program that I think you had also participated in called StartMate's First Believers program. And the objective of that program is really to create and continue to create a critical mass of angel investors within the Australian startup ecosystem, right? Because we really want more people to be involved to invest. I think angels are sort of like the quiet engine that really power the ecosystem here and abroad, really. But, we had come off the back of that program and we were really keen to sort of like get going, right? It's, if there's anything I'll say about investing, it's fun to talk about it, but there's doing it is a completely different experience. And so getting those runs on the board, making those investments, we really wanted to be able to do. So I think long-winded way of saying formed a syndicate. And what that is really like a collection or a group of people that come together to make investments together. Now, the level of involvement across each person in that group can differ syndicate to syndicate. Some syndicates have a lead and they sort of make all investment decisions and then everyone just follows along. And then some syndicates, are smaller and maybe they collectively decide on what investments to make. But the purpose really is the syndicates enable smaller investors to write bigger checks into startups, right? So one of the things that when startups are raising money, it's really hard to manage a cap table. And so I don't know if you've discussed cap tables on the podcast
Not yet.
before,
Not yet.
really.
I was going to say.
But, the short of a cap table is really like who's invested in the startup, right? Who holds equity in the startup. And it's one thing to have a cap table of like 5, 6 people. It's another thing completely to have a cap table of like 50, 60 people. It becomes quite unwieldy. And so many startup founders don't want to have, 10 to 20 different small checks on their cap table, which is why, people coming together for syndicates really helps that out, right? Because then I
Yeah.
individually can write a check for $5,000, as will my next friend and my next friend and my next friend. And together we can maybe put together 25 to 50, which is a more sort of fit for purpose check size for these angel investments. Where do you want to go
Yeah.
from there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great. And I think it's good because we're talking about it in a way that like people can hear about it. Like, so if you're interested to form a syndicate to invest in startups, you don't have 200 million.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's
Like
okay.
we can pool all our money, form a syndicate, and invest into different companies
Yeah,
as well.
pretty much. And so, I formed a small syndicate with friends. We would make investment decisions together. We would meet every week to sort of discuss what we were seeing, what was interesting to us. And then we would decide, hey, do we put in a check of $25,000 into XYZ company? And I think that was a really good exercise and like really good training for all our investment muscles, right? Because then you have to go through the process of thinking through, what startups are interesting, the decision-making process of like what's good, what's not, disagreeing, agreeing. That's like a really good exercise. That's one kind of syndicate, I'd say. The other kind of syndicate is one, and there are amazing platforms these days that you can leverage to be able to see, people running syndicates like platforms like Aussie Angels, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Like, if you want an education around angel investing, I think joining some of the syndicates that exists within platforms like Aussie Angels is really, really helpful because those deal leads, will bring deals in, write really amazing investment notes as to why they're investing in a particular company. And you, as a regular angel investor, can just decide, oh, I'd like to participate in this particular deal. So
Yeah.
I guess just from a learning curve standpoint, I think that's a really, really good entry point.
Yeah, huge. And you've learned so much. You get to understand how, okay, it's not a hot topic right now, or it's not a hot product, it's not a hot industry, but in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, it will be. So, like
Yeah.
that lens of thinking, because most of the time, the angel deals that I would get presented
Yeah,
are things that I'm like, why are we even talking about this? But having the lens of in 5 years, 10 years time,
for
this is
sure.
what everyone's going to be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, angel investing in general, right, requires you to have sort of a really longer time horizon in your head. My joke is that, for investors like myself and many, many others, is it's really hard to say we're good at this until 10 years later, right? When we actually see returns, et cetera. But you really are forced to adopt, a long view of things. Because where what might not make sense today might make sense, to your point, five to 10 years from now. And getting that taste and understanding, where those opportunity sets are, I think comes from being exposed to as much of it as possible, right? Like, just it's sort of
Yeah,
like exposure therapy, if you will. The more you're around it, the more you meet founders, the more you learn about different industries, the more you're more finely attuned to understanding where trends are going, where the world could possibly be 5 to 10 years from now, which I think is an important muscle in investing.
absolutely. And how do you talk to yourself when it comes to like risk management on things? Because I also advocate for having runs in the board, but I think for people who haven't done it, one, if they haven't invested whatsoever, and then obviously that with any investment asset or asset class have some risks associated to it. So how do you talk to yourself when you're about to invest? What's this? How do you think about it?
How do I think about it? Well, for angel investing, right? For venture investing, that's highly specific because it's a very high risk, high reward space, right? Often you're investing at a really early stage. Sometimes maybe it's just an idea and a dream, really. And so I think, at least from an angel investing standpoint, from a direct investing standpoint, you have to be comfortable. I don't know if this is a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take at all, but you have to be comfortable with like losing that money, right? Like, it's really high risk. And so with a really high sort of liquidity lockup, it might be 5 to 10 years before you see any of it. And so I think for anyone, like, you sort of have to play that calculus. And for angel investing, I think that really does sit in the highest risk bucket. I think ultimately it becomes a question of like how you construct your portfolio. And so how much do you have in that super high risk bucket? Things that you're like, I could lose that and like still be okay. Don't invest your emergency fund into angel investing. And then the other end of the spectrum, right? Whether it's fixed income or like other sort of investment instruments where the risk is significantly lower. I don't know. I think you just have to think across that whole spectrum and what percentage are you putting in those different buckets. Depends on your risk appetite, really. I don't know. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers the question.
It does, it does. And one thing that I've said in my workshops before was five
Yeah,
typically of your portfolio can be allocated to alternative
venture.
investments
Yeah,
or like venture, like
yeah,
high risk
for sure.
investments. Some people are 10%. And I feel like this would be on the riskier side if
Yeah.
you're 20%.
For sure. And it also depends on things like your age, right? And like where you are in life. Like, it's very different for a 20-year-old to do that versus like a 50 to 60-year-old. Like, the how you construct that portfolio. I think everyone should be investing at every age, but that also changes as sort of as you get older. And so I think part of what's exciting here is, with your audience also, is the earlier you start. I mean, people talk about this all the time, right? The better, because returns compound over time. Like, time is your best friend when it comes to investing. So start young, I guess.
Yeah, I just can't help but think of like 20-year-old me thinking about angel
I know,
investing back in the day.
right? Like totally, like not even in the realm of possibility. But I think that also comes down to, I think that's changing maybe a little bit these days as people are more
Yeah,
exposed to technology, the possibility of what can be built, especially in the age of Claude and AI, right? And so I think there's a little bit more awareness these days. And so hopefully that translates to not irresponsible investing, but I think an openness to making those bets or learning really sooner rather than later.
got it. And would you say we talked a little bit about how women in general are very prepared, like do all the research,
Yep.
prepare everything, have decks, have slides,
Uh-huh.
but never really investing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've seen repeatedly or
I think women, like you said, we like to be prepared, right? We like to like make sure all our T's are crossed, our I's are dotted, as much information as possible. I feel like the risk sometimes is that it creates a sort of inertia and, we're always waiting for the next bit of information so we can make a better decision. But the reality is we often all have to operate with imperfect information, right? And so it's striking the balance between preparedness, which I think is really important, and, action. Whether that's investing or founding a startup, whatever the case might be, I think it's really important to sort of like be able to draw that line for yourself as and say, I think I have as much information as I'll possibly have. You'll have to make it a decision one way or the other, whether that's making an investment, whether that's building a startup, I think. And that line is different for different people, right? And so you have to know that for yourself, but it's work I think people have to do and have to be conscious of because it's really easy to get like analysis paralysis. More so for women, I
yeah.
think, than, the other half of the population, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I think there's something to be said about analysis paralysis and waiting for the best,
Yeah.
final, super clear information. I'm always interested about like decision making frameworks and books. Do you have any recommendations for like books or any decision making
Yeah.
frameworks that you personally
I
use?
mean, I can't really recommend the book because I'm still about to read it, but I just ordered Annie Duke's Thinking in Bets. And so have you heard of it?
Ooh. No.
I mean, I can't speak to it comprehensively because I literally just bought it, but she's a professional poker player. And so she writes about, yeah. So she writes about, I think, what it means to like make these bets, right, with imperfect information, which I think is a really important skill to have. I actually attended this sort of startup poker night a couple of days ago, which is pretty cool. And, my colleague who sort of organized it, one of the things that she talked about was around poker. Think about it. Like, what does that space look like? It's also very like male dominated, not a lot of women, because there's this sort of feeling that I don't have that skill set, right? That's hard to do. That's like a guy's game. When in reality, there's skills to be learned, there's strategy, and then you like just have to make decisions on imperfect information. And so like building that confidence to say, this is something that I can also do. This is not a space that's, for men only. I think it's really important. So introducing women to these spaces, I think. Anyway, that's the book. I don't ask me questions about it
Mhm.
because I haven't read it, but it's meant to be quite good. I can't
Yeah,
believe I'm recommending a book I haven't read. Yeah.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
I'm curious about it because definitely poker is the one that, you see a lot of it's in the media, right? Like you see in the
Yeah,
movies, it's one of those cool card games.
for sure.
And you're right. It's definitely something that a lot of I also find this it seems like there's a correlation with strategic and high performing people
Yeah.
to knowing and playing poker well.
Totally.
So
There's
I don't
strategy
know.
to it, right? You have a limited, finite number of cards, finite kinds of cards. There's a bit of chance, and it's like, how do you make bets? How big of a bet do you make, depending on what you have and what you don't know and what you know? Like, I think, but it's really, it's in many ways, it's both as complicated and as simple as that.
Hmm.
So, especially for investing or especially if you think about a framework, I think
Yeah.
poker is probably a good sort of analog, to be honest. I joke that sometimes this
Yeah.
job is gambling. Don't quote me on that, but
Well, I think we had this discussion,
Yeah.
but in some ways it is. And that's actually the reason why we recommend for if people are thinking of venture investing, it is you put the money that you're kind of okay to lose
Totally.
because it is high risk, high rewards.
Yep.
And it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that we're able to talk about the angel investing demystification and like talk about like how risky it is and the complexity of it as well. So the last thing that we were going to talk about was our views on education.
Right.
Is education, university, MBAs, masters, are they still valuable?
Hot take. Okay. I mean, I went to college, I went to university, I have a double major. I don't think I would necessarily be where I am without my particular education. That said, I don't think I'm successful because of the particular content I learned, right? Like while I was in school. I think education is important if only it gives you the space to put yourself in situations you might not otherwise find, right? So like when I went to school, I'll use myself. Yeah, if I use myself as an example, when I went to school, I took like the weirdest classes. Like I did like the classic math, economics, the usual, right? What I was expected to sort of learn. But I also took like Javanese gamelan, Korean art.
What? What's that?
It's
What's
like, you know, that
Japanese
it's
gamelan?
like that instrument from Java. We have it in the Philippines too, called kulintang, but like the Javanese version of it is like, I'm sure you've seen it, those like metal gong things.
I was gonna say it's like the triangle looking thing.
No, it's like those like
No.
it's almost like a piano, like all these different size gongs like in a row, and you like go like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Like I took strange and weird and quirky classes, but I think and you know, I don't use it day to day. Like I don't play the gamelan, but like I think like turning on that part of your brain, again, that back to creativity, I think is really important. I think, you know, it's an opportunity to meet people and build relationships with people you might not otherwise know. And so I think that's a long-winded way of saying like, look, people can study all they want, but like unless you like create an environment for yourself where you're meeting different people, trying different things, I think that's ultimately what's important. And experimenting. I don't know, like I think that's what's actually important, right? And so you can go to school, but if you don't do any of these things, I think, you know, it'll be challenging. The world is also changing quite rapidly, right? And so people can learn on their own far easier than they ever could before. And so I don't want to discount that. I think that's a valid pathway into life, but it's just about, for me, it's about finding and creating venues for yourself to experience and experiment and meet other people. Sometimes that's cool, sometimes that's not. Totally up to you.
Got it. Got it. And last night I was interviewing a founder and she's quite deep in like the AI space as
Sure.
well. So I asked this question and yeah, kind of similar to you. It's like, yes, there is a value in it, but in this day and age where technology is so fast
Yeah.
and what matters more is agency and where you
Yeah.
position yourself, what you're truly interested in and what you do with that opportunity is huge.
Totally. I mean, you know, people can have a million master's degrees and sometimes it means something, sometimes it doesn't. And so like it's really what you make of it, right? If you can make some like it is completely up to you how
Yeah.
valuable it can be or isn't. So
Yeah. Did I tell you that I started like a master's degree in the
nice.
beginning of the year?
That's exciting. How's that going? In what?
I dropped it. I dropped out.
I mean, look, you know, quick decision is better than no decision, right? Like
Yeah.
what were
I
you
like that.
what were you studying or looking to study at least?
It was applied finance. So I was just like, you know what? I wanna study. I want to get a master's degree to prove to myself, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I want to do this. And then I did it, and it was one of the most expensive universities in Australia as well.
Yeah.
And then maybe because I've been in tech,
Yeah.
that I know about what a good user experience looks
Yeah.
like, what a good UI looks like. And if I'm paying $80,000,
It's a lot.
this is my expectation.
Correct. Yeah.
And I just got there and I was like, what do you mean this is how we're learning?
Yeah.
And just the way of teaching, the way I was learning, it wasn't enough. And I didn't think it was worth 80K.
Yeah, for sure.
And on top of that, what's the ROI of this? What's the
Yeah.
value of this now? Can I get it in any other way?
Totally.
So that was a short-lived master's, but I'm I'm glad that I
Still an
decided.
experience. I know. It's good that you decided. I think it really depends on what you're trying to solve for, right? Like if you're young and, and you're solving for meeting new people, trying new things, uni can be a great place to do that. But if that's not of interest to you and you want to just build something, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I could think about was I'm so glad that I went to uni, that I had my first
You've
experience
had
of
your
uni when
experience,
I
right? Yeah,
did.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know what you're saying. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I don't have, for example, I don't have an MBA. And like, so I have my bachelor's degree. It's so far gone, like, from a very long time ago. But I don't necessarily have an MBA. And on one hand, I'm like, should I do that? That might be interesting. Be in the classroom, meet people. There's a bit of that, right? It's about like being
Yeah.
surrounded by particular people that have experience, that are also doing cool things. People do cool things in school sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
But at the same
But
time,
I
if I'm
also,
trying to
yeah.
be like, I want to learn how to like run a financial model, to be honest, I could probably learn that on my own,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it really depends. You have to know what you're walking into and be very clear on what your goal for doing it is. If that's unclear in any way, then yeah, it's hard to get value out of it. That's true for everything, not just
Exactly.
education, but
Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
So I think that's an incredible insight on education, very hot topic right now. And I think with MBAs as well, a lot of schools, I guess, like besides the top tier level schools, have been discounting their MBAs
Really?
as
I didn't
well
realize that.
because there's less uptake of
Yeah.
MBAs. I guess
They're
people or
expensive.
maybe Gen Z, so
So
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah, I think maybe Gen Z have realized, well, I can't even get like a really nice paying job. I don't think I can afford to get in debt for this MBA or have the upfront cash
For sure.
to get this.
Yeah. I mean, the cost benefit analysis is really, I mean, if you run it, look, it sometimes is useful for people, right? You go to like a top tier school, you meet all the right people that has value, sure. But is it worth, $250,000 in debt? If you go to America, right? Like that's sort of like,
Yeah,
I think it's even more than that these days, but
crazy,
it's a
crazy.
lot.
Yeah. Well, this is a message for those thinking about
I mean,
MBAs.
think about it. It could be right for you. I don't want to say,
Could be, could
I
be.
don't want to be like, don't do it.
Yeah.
It could be right for you, but you just have to know what you're
Yeah.
getting into.
Also, caveat, see if you can get a scholarship in these universities because
Also,
I find not many people apply.
to the
Or some people
scholarships.
kind of like to the scholarships or
Yeah.
like they discount themselves.
Yeah. Don't discount
And
yourselves,
sometimes
guys. Yeah.
you just have to try.
Totally. I think there's so much value in that. Just try. Just ask, right? The worst that could happen is you get a no. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And
More
and
information.
sometimes
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a no and then the person that they've offered it to is like somehow they can't do it or they can't take the offer.
Sure.
And guess who
You're
who they
next.
will call in the wait list? The
Exactly.
person who followed up.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, apply for that scholarship. I went to school on a scholarship and it was a really sort of, they picked, I'm not trying to sound whatever about it, but like it was a scholarship that went to 2 people in the Philippines every year.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so,
yes. Good.
you know,
That's really competitive. Yeah. And also in the Philippines, it's so competitive.
yeah, it can be very competitive. And so like, what did I know? But, sometimes ignorance is better than knowing too much. And so apply anyway. Like, what do you have to lose? Yeah, sure, the time and effort it takes to put something together. But if you can afford it from that perspective, time and effort, when you're young,
Why not?
especially, why not?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I got a scholarship as well in one for like for my high school in the
Oh,
Philippines. And that's
nice.
why I know that it's like it's
It can be very
it's
competitive.
competitive as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more people and for uni in Singapore.
Oh, yeah. Did you
So
go to
yeah,
uni in
like
Singapore?
just for like a program in Nanyang Technology
Very
University.
cool. It's a good school. Yeah.
But it's one of those things that I didn't get it initially.
Yeah.
I wasn't in their top 10
Right.
recipients.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I called up and followed up and they said no. But later, a few weeks later, one of the top 10 recipients couldn't do the program. So they offered it to me. And I'm like, great, I love
Amazing.
it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like, persistence and just real focus, I think.
Yeah,
We
just
we put
trying.
a lot of value on talent and all that, which is great, right? Like, but there's a lot of value also in just being persistent and hard work and like focusing your energies on the things that you really want.
So yesterday I got with my interview yesterday with this founder, she said that one of her friends sent like 25 follow-up emails, or is it 25 or just 20 follow-up emails,
Sure.
like no response whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then just like maybe a few months later, they got a $25 million deal.
Yeah.
I was like, from 20? I was like, wow, I give up after like 3.
Yeah, I
So,
know, right? Rejection is, I mean, look, rejection and like your reaction to rejection is a very human emotion. Like, I think that's valid. I think you can feel bad, but like, then
yeah.
it's a question of like, just keep going or like keep doing it. If this is something you really want, right? Like, but you have to be very clear about like how important this is to you and like if it's something you really want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I can talk for ages with you. And I think we've touched on this already, but before we wrap up, you've been in the working scene for a while, you've done career transitions, and you've moved countries.
Yeah.
What what advice would you give to 20-year-olds today?
Invest early, time compounds. No, I'd say, I think building skills is important, but also building relationships is also really important. And so you never know, the next, it's often the unlikeliest of people that might sort of help you in your next step, right, of your career. And so I think building skills, do it, learn all the things, but, also build relationships. I think that's really key. And I think the other thing is just like say yes to things, even if they're kind of scary or even kind of uncomfortable. Like, the non-linear career moves. I've jumped around a bit and, maybe my act three is in some creative space. Talk to me in 5 to 10 years.
Manifesting for
Yeah,
you?
exactly. Thanks. But you got to back yourself. And sometimes that means you might not feel ready, but, just do it. I think if you're 20, then you have the advantage of youth, right? And so
Yes.
if it doesn't work out, you're not, you still have so much time. You can figure something else out. And so I think saying yes to things, even if you're slightly uncomfortable, backing yourself, even if you don't feel fully prepared. Prepare as much as you can, but you don't have to be. I think it's a myth that you can ever be 100% prepared for anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. And the last question, I promise. What is one thing you wish people would stop telling young women founders or women in tech?
Look, I think in the same vein, right? Like we tell, people of color, women, minority, like you have to be, like we say things like you have to be twice as good to get like half as far. We say things like that because we are sometimes held to like a different standard because society. And on one hand, maybe that's motivating. On the other, I think it creates again this trap of perfectionism and having to be 100% prepared before you do anything. I think sometimes you just have to be good enough and then, raise your hand and do it. I think that's definitely one thing. And obviously I think which you'll agree with, there's always this myth of like find your passion and the money
Mm,
will follow, which is great in theory, but I think it is really important to be financially literate. You can be passionate and build things that you really like or you're really interested in, but you have to be strategic. It's taboo, but money is important. It makes the world go round, right? And so like getting that comfort and literacy, especially for a population, women who have, historically been told, stay in your lane, right? Not your place to
mm.
do. Like, I think that's also really important. And I think from a capability standpoint, like you are more than capable. If you need a confidence boost, here it is. Like you can do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, thank you. I know that a lot of people will want to hear that. Sometimes you just want sometimes someone to tell you that like, look, rejection is fine. Give it a try. Make sure that you're financially stable and you can follow your passion once you're financially stable. I actually agree with that.
I
I
mean,
agree with that
I I
100%.
don't know like I'm saying follow your like I think you can do both, right? Like or you know, I think keeping an eye on it and like figuring out, I think you just have to be smart about it and don't
Yeah.
be scared to learn about it. I think is more that than anything else, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I do. The people that I've met who have followed their passions and didn't really think about like the financial or like the livelihood implications typically have come from generational wealth.
Totally, right? And so that's not
Like, I'm like, okay, cool.
yeah, that's nothing to say about privilege, right? Like
Yeah.
some people will come from really privileged positions, others will not. And so whether we like it or not, that really plays into it. So we're thinking about.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge. Exactly. Well, Chenelle, thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank
I
you.
can't wait for this to be released. I know that a lot of people will find this super insightful and inspiring.
Great. Thanks for having me. Really a pleasure. Good to chat about whatever all day. So, yeah,
Absolutely. I'll stop this
amazing.
now. Thank you for listening to another episode of Fiery Femmes. If this resonated, share it with a woman in your life because we rise higher when we rise together. Don't forget to follow and review. It helps more women access the tools and conversations that build wealth and confidence. For more career and financial empowerment, come hang out on Instagram and YouTube at Fiery Femmes. I'll see you in the next episode.